Hey, everybody. Oh, wait, there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Games Tavern Happy Hour. This week I'm joined by Corey, and we have a whole bunch of
Evening.
great news we're going to be covering. Let's see. Oh, we got Dire Rabbit. Hey, Dire Rabbit. So, we're just going to go ahead and get jumping into it. We'll cover, small chit chat later, I guess. So, one of the big news pieces that I saw this week that I think is actually going to be pretty interesting. You're following the WizKid stuff. You're really familiar with their releases, right?
Oh yeah. WizKids minis are pretty good. I typically invest in the unpainted ones these days, but yeah, no, I big fan.
Yeah, their unpainted stuff is fantastic. If you
Yeah,
like painting as a hobbyist, I like playing with painted minis, but I don't like painting them. So this is going to be this is good news for me.
they're great if
Uh,
they're already there, right? It's
yeah, it's like
just
all
that
right, well, why
process.
not? So there's some stuff coming out for the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. It's coming up. I believe
Yep.
the books are out and about. You can get them in some places.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
been out I think, a little over a month now. Some
yeah,
local stores still having trouble getting them for, all the shipping problems that have been there of late, but the book is out. Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of those the magic settings. So it's not really a traditional Forgotten Realms setup. It's
right.
like Ravnica, where it's sort of another
Yeah.
IP that's pulled in,
It's
but it's some really cool stuff.
another sphere they've added to the verse
Yeah,
as a way. Yeah. So it's really trying to bring the two fan bases together a little more.
which
And
makes
it's
sense.
yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for Wizards.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, the announcement that they have there is they actually put up for pre-order a what they're calling a Hydra. It's and I'm going to completely destroy this name, Polu Kranos, the World Eater, and I put in the show notes brackets Big Hydra because it's one heck of a
It's a
Hydra.
big Hydra. Yeah, it's a big heck and chonker of a Hydra there. It's one of their what are they calling them? Premium minis, one of their premium figures. So really it's just a very large pre-painted mini, like some of their other previous premium miniatures, like the Kraken that they released, which I'm a proud owner of. The Falling Star ship, the that's pre-painted. Those are all considered premium miniatures, and there's more.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's the stuff you can get in the blind boxes, which are all usually like adventurer size, 28 mil, 25, 32, somewhere in that
they
scale.
usually come with a large mini and three regular or medium base or smaller minis with them.
Yeah, and but the premium ones are much bigger than those. Like everyone has
Yeah, they,
seen like like the frost giants where they're probably about that big. These dwarf those. These are
Not
monsters.
yeah, these are great. Like because you could get a lot of those giants in the blind boxes that came out for Storm King's Thunder.
Yeah,
I've got a bunch of giants from those blind boxes. I'm actually a big fan of those blind boxes. Those are great supplements.
yeah, those
Uh,
are really cool.
but these are all like gargantuan or huge base models. No, I think it's technically gargantuan base models or larger.
Yeah, I think giants might be
Yeah,
huge, but it's
giant.
still
Most giants are huge. I think. Yeah,
yeah. These are
that's right.
monstrously large models, and they're
Yeah.
they're absolutely beautiful. I dropped the chat. Okay, cool. Dire Rabbit seeing it. Yeah, it's really cool. If you haven't looked at it and you don't have a chance to actually dig into the chat there for you're on your phone or your TV or something, it's everything I wanted a Hydra to be. It's big and green and has a slightly different underbelly and has like red flaming mane,
It's
I
got
guess.
a frill along
Frill.
each of its necks. It does only have four heads, so I don't know how picky you want to be about the number of heads your Hydra has at home, but that's what it's got. But
Or
this is a
just take
very
some
large model, and
clippers to it, and then it'll grow a couple more heads
just
and problem
exactly.
solved. Yeah,
Yeah. The Games Tavern is not responsible for any damage you inflict to your own models.
true. But yeah, so that's a really cool one. They also have the rest of the Mythic of Theros line coming out, and I believe all of those are actually going to be blind boxes. So it's going to be really cool
Yeah,
to see what's coming up with that.
yeah, they did
And
blind boxes for the Ravnica setting as well. Those were really neat because that was a very, very unique setting compared to a lot of the previous settings we've seen in D&D recently.
yeah, it's not quite high fantasy. It's kind of has a steampunk flair to it,
but
and
but
it's
toned
cool.
way down. It's
Yeah,
it's it's got that unique mechano magical feel to it, but still leans more heavily on the magical side. and some there's not a whole lot of top hats and monocles going on in
That's
Ravnica.
that's the best part of of steampunk though.
They definitely took that part away then. Sorry, Mac.
Well, whatever. I'll go back to my goggles or something over there. So this is really cool. You're familiar with the Odyssey of Theros at least, or concept wise? Because I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge.
concept wise, it's supposed to be very like classical Greek mythological setting. Um, you can read a good blurb about it on D&D Beyond to kind of give you a better idea of what the setting involves. But this is going to lean heavily on the like Greek mythology. There's going to be a lot of I think they made ooh, satyrs a playable race in that
Yeah, I remember
one,
hearing about that.
and so like back in Ravnica, they made Minotaur and Centaur playable races, and now they're making a satyr official satyr playable race with the Odyssey of Theros there, and it looks really interesting. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the book eventually.
Yeah,
But I
shipping
would I
times
would
are
like to,
weird all over the place right
yeah,
now.
I want to make sure I try and get it from my local game store because especially with how much everybody's had to shut down and change their hours around, I want to support them as much as possible.
Yeah, I only buy things online that my local stores can't get, just because
Yeah,
I spend so
it's
much time in these
literally
places. I owe them rent.
exactly. It's literally a can't get. That's when I'll
Yeah,
go to the evil overlord Amazon. And
yeah, that's a fair way to put that. So the Polukranos is like we said, it's on pre-order right now, along with the rest of the Mythic Odyssey of Theros, and that's all going to be released in August. So you got about a month to wait for that. So if you're excited about that, let us know in the chat. If you're not excited about that, tell us something you are excited about in the chat,
yeah,
and we'll come up to it.
I'll take
Anytime
that.
during the show, guys, feel free to chime in. We have one eye on the chat. I have to keep looking so I don't get that weird lazy eye thing going on. But jump in and we will say hi. So we do realize, yes, we do realize Amazon owns Twitch, but they're whatever. They're not
I
going to
said what I
ignore
said.
us.
I said what I said. They're not paying attention. It's fine.
So while we're on the WizKids thing, there's some pretty cool stuff that I think is actually really cool that they're coming out with. It's another one. It's the Sapphire Dragon from the 45th anniversary of D&D art that came out 6
Yeah.
months ago, 7 months ago, something like that.
Yep. And this mini got teased in their D&D live stream a couple
Yeah.
weeks back, along with all the other like Rime with the Frostmaiden minis that were coming out. This was another big showpiece. So it's another huge gargantuan based model, and it's a beautiful model.
Oh yeah.
It's really epic looking sapphire dragon.
I
It's
believe
just
that's a new dragon that they made up for this. For anybody who's not keeping track, it's D&D recently did its 45th anniversary. It's kind of hard to tell exactly when what date they're counting from what the first publication is.
right.
But
Apparently
Sapphire
45 years
Anniversary is
ago.
what
So,
it is.
yeah.
So they
Yeah.
made a Sapphire Dragon, which
Yeah,
is
as I
really
understand
cool.
it, gemstone dragons haven't been a thing in the most recent
No.
core. They're not a thing in the most recent core rules, but they were in previous editions. And then other publishers in more recent years have made rules for gemstone dragons. I think most notably, you get like Matt Colville his his first Kickstarter had rules for the various gemstone dragons in them.
Well, Dire Rabbit is pointing out that her birthday is coming up, which is useful to know. And I'm not gonna lie, my birthday is also coming up, but I don't need a giant dragon. And this is a little bit older news, but while we're talking on their 45th anniversary stuff, they have it's their Sapphire anniversary a few months or 6 months ago or so. When they announced it all, they released a gemstone, a sapphire dice set for like $300-$400 or something. So if anybody out there
Yeah.
likes me and wants to get me a birthday gift, go
And
for it.
because Mac likes ostentatious dice. There you go.
I do like, yeah, I like dice I'm scared to roll. It's not the most expensive dice set I've seen, but it is up there.
Yeah, I'm not we're not dropping the coin on the tungsten dice, right? We don't need to talk
It's
about that.
one day, one day. Yeah, for anybody who's unfamiliar, people, is that PAX Unplugged at one of, I think it might have been Level Up Dice.
Is level up dice. There, yeah. Level up dice does the various metals, and the tungsten dice, I think, are technically their most expensive and their heaviest by
Yeah,
far.
yeah, they're I think they
By
were like
far.
680 for a set.
For the full polyhedral
Yeah,
set, yeah.
which I
Something
saw
like that.
3 of them get sold, so you could tell because it was
Hey,
the people walking around with like a sort of a hunch at the end of the convention.
right. But with a very small bag, it's just
Yeah,
like, oh God.
yeah, they were really heavy dice. But if you want slightly cooler or slightly less heavy and expensive dice, they're I don't know if they're cooler because being able to throw it from the space shuttle and obliterate a city would be really that's a cool die. Uh,
The crater, yeah.
yeah, we're completely off topic yet. So yeah, the 45th anniversary Sapphire Dragon model. One of the really cool things about this one, I think, is that it's based on the art from the second link that I put there, and it's kind of like translucent. It's really nice.
It's a translucent blue plastic, and
Yeah,
they've got some like artistic kind of sparkles painted onto it to make it seem shiny. And I believe there are also rules for it in D&D Beyond as well.
yeah, that sounds right.
So you can actually see the stat block for this ridiculous thing.
Yeah, that's something you throw at your party when you're like, well, we're gonna have a TPK, but I want to do it in the coolest way possible. I'm fed up with your nonsense, but
Like I really want to make them ooh and ah before this mini eats
yeah.
them. And it's like,
I think, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later once we get into the second half, but that'd be like the kind of mini words like, oh, you enter the dungeon and you see the dragon sleeping on the golden pile, and it screams and flies off deeper into its lair or something, just so you can have it on the table a couple times, because
yeah.
it's a beautiful miniature.
I think this is one of those minis that I would actually add more weights to the base, so it gives a more satisfying thud
Thud,
when you
yeah.
drop it on the table. Yes.
Yeah, the move to resins and plastics has really kind of removed that joyful when
A
kill a
little
guy,
bit.
knock it over, and the whole table rattles.
As long as there's enough lip on the base, you can glue all sorts of like small metal weights to the underside of the base. It's a great way to weight those suckers down without worrying about like nicking or breaking a tabletop.
So what we got from Shalroth42 is saying dice from space obliterating cities has me remembering the concept of Thor's hammer from Footfall. Niven and
Oh
Cornell
yeah.
flying crowbars with an ID chip. Yeah, I was thinking the rods from God's concept where they took a giant tungsten rod like the size of a telephone pole and drop it and you get monstrous amounts of kinetic energy
Yeah, it's
released.
just like satellite defense weapons where it's
Yeah,
just a tungsten rod that you position and throw at a city.
yeah, and there's a
Just
reason
that's
why
all you.
we've made it illegal to weaponize space because it's terrifying.
Yeah, there
There
Yeah.
was one sci-fi novel. I don't remember what it was, but the idea was the only bomber you would need in like intergalactic interstellar warfare would be something that would drop a marble of neutronium. So just something made of just pure neutrons, and it was so dense it would basically cheese hole the planet back and forth, and just eventually make it cave in on itself. Uh, so if you're running a sci-fi game and you want to, do exterminatus without lighting the air on fire, cool, have a party. That's a fun one.
I have a problem with this because how do you make the neutrons stick to each other? But that is an
Glue, I
entirely
think.
different discussion.
Right? Yeah, you're smart on this kind of stuff.
It's fine. We're just gonna. I don't. We'll just
All right, we'll move
next.
on to other news. We'll move on to other news. So if anybody out there, I'm sure most of our D&D players actually end up using D&D Beyond in some capacity. There's a lot of stuff coming out from them. Today, in fact, they released a couple quality of life updates. The biggest one that I've noticed is just when you click on your stat, or not your stat block, your picture and your name and your little experience
Portrait of
bar.
the drop down menu. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to it being a drop down, it comes in from the right side, like everything else does when you click on them, which is nice. I like the consistency.
Yeah.
It's not a huge deal, but
Kind of gives you all your options laid out on the right side of the character sheet now. It's because they keep adding stuff like dice rollers and stuff like that. They need to
yeah.
kind of improve the amount of space they're offering.
So I like that. I think it's a nice way to do it, and I haven't played around with things like change theme and change backdrop and all that because basics fine
I
for
have.
me. Oh, you have.
I
How's that work?
oh yeah, I what I really would like to see from their character sheets is basically a night mode or dark mode option. Because changing the themes and the backdrops is great, it's fine, but still every single box is just ultra white. And I'd like to see a night mode, just like every other major application on the internet
Yeah.
has. It's that would be my one big ask from D&D Beyond.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice. A couple things I would really love to see is we were talking about this a little bit before, but they have their encounter builders and they have their beta dice rollers. So being able to actually kind of move it to some kind of a capacity where you can basically start running it as a virtual tabletop application, I think that'd be really cool.
I mean, that's the way it seems like they're going. They're
Yeah.
just building each of these little pieces one at a time. Eventually, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a map generator or some sort of actual VTT that goes with this. Uh, I think as a DM, really the next thing, as a DM now, if I was talking as a player, night mode. I want the dark mode for my character sheet. As a DM, I want to be able to actually get a collated list of what all my players are rolling because I love the fact that there's a dice roller there. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'd like there to be an output for all those dice rolls to me.
Yeah, I would love that. Or if you're running the encounter builder, all your players roll and it builds in the initiative. So
Yeah.
it's just that would be so convenient because one of the
Because right
biggest
now it's inputting it. You got to input it
yeah,
yourself.
one
But
of the big that's my choke point in an encounter is like, all right, give me everyone rolls, give me a minute while I rejigger everything and write it all down, and because I still do things analog. But
at least you can auto roll all the monsters.
yeah,
At least
that is nice.
there's
I
that.
haven't played around with the encounter builder much, but
I have. Yeah.
it's worthwhile.
Oh yeah, it's worthwhile. My only gripe with that is basically my gripe with just how they do CR in the first place. Because, but I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit later in the
Yeah,
show.
we'll dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so that's one of the big or one of the small big updates they did today.
I wish
And
Alreth said there. The white character screen means he doesn't need a camera light.
not gonna lie, that's mainly how I do it at my place because I
Yeah,
don't
that's
want to
fair.
get one of the big Halo ones. I want to figure out a way to rotate out my art there, but all my other art has glass in front of it, so it reflects
Right.
back, and it looks awful. And if I get other art, then I can get a fancy light there.
Yeah,
But
I
sorry,
don't
go ahead.
dig the white character sheet so much just for myself because I am very pale, so I that really washes me out on the camera if I'm doing any streaming stuff.
Yeah, that's a problem. It
Yeah,
makes
maybe
me
I
look
should
like
just go outside more. I don't know. It's a
That's unadvisable right now.
apparently
Yeah.
said
But so
the mask line.
yeah, just contour. Yeah.
It's contour.
I'm apparently really red, and I don't know why. Because whatever. Uh, so one. Anyway, well, let's get back on topic. The other piece of news that D&D Beyond came out with is their new character sheet application on your cell phone telephone.
Yeah, the player app. Yeah,
Player app, yeah.
I got in on the alpha for it, so I played with it a little bit.
Okay.
But since I'm not leaving the house, it's not as useful as just going on the internet, basically at my desktop.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and play with it for the next Whiskey Magic and Destruction on Thursday, just to give it a go, make it happen. But
Yeah, I was playing with it a little bit this afternoon,
okay,
just seeing how it goes. And I like the screen switching with swipes, just like if you're on the website or the mobile version of the website. It does not have the integrated dice roller right now. It does not have any tooltips for spells right now. Oh, if you've got internet, there's really no reason not to go to the website.
yeah,
And
I think the idea of being able to download quickly and just see what you have, using it as it stands now, and I'm gonna caveat the hell out of this because I like D&D Beyond. I like what they're
do
kicking
too.
out.
I really do.
As it stands right now, this does not cut the mustard as a standalone product.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It's if you just need a recap of what you are, maybe you're a fighter who doesn't have a whole lot of, it doesn't have any special magic skills or magic weapons, and what you say on the sheet is what you do. Cool. Have a party. You roll this many dice and you punch things. It's great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
If you
or
don't have
you'll
Wi-Fi and your cell reception is spotty, this can be useful as long as you have actually pulled up your character sheet on the player app ahead of time. If you've never opened your character sheet on the player app, it is not going to already be downloaded. It won't have done that in the background already. You have to have at least physically opened it once, and it will have a copy of it there for you. So it's great if you're in a terrible reception area with no Wi-Fi. Other than that, or if or if your data cost is a little high. Other than that, you should
yeah.
just use the mobile website,
I,
really.
I could see it being worthwhile if you do a lot of like the gaming aids, like you have the magic spell cards or the skill cards for other classes. I could see it being useful on that front, but at some point you're going to end up just having to cross line. I'll just print it out and go with it
Yeah.
and play full analog. So it shows promise. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, technically, it is still in beta right now. It's
Yeah.
not a finished product yet. Technically,
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they go with it, but I'll give it a go on Thursday, see if I can actually play
yep,
from it. I'm not holding my breath, but I think it'll be, it's a step in the right direction.
that's fair. Yep.
I think we've kind of beaten that horse. Let's see what's happening there. Hey, Vash is on. Hey, Vash.
Hey, Vash.
Roll20 app for Roll20 does that. Don't text and drive. Oh yeah, that's good advice, Vash. So we're going to shift away from Dungeons and Dragons specific for a moment here, and to actually go and talk about Pathfinder. It's a little game some people have played.
You may have heard of Pathfinder.
So
Yeah.
about 2 years ago, they started the playtest for their for Pathfinder 2.0 or version 2 or whatever they're calling it, second edition.
Really, 2 years ago at this point? Wow.
Yeah. I was still living in New Jersey when they put out the
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So yeah, it happens.
Yep.
And I'm going to be honest here. I haven't played any of any of the new Pathfinder. I've poked around, looked at it a little bit. I was big into Pathfinder 1 though. I thought that was a good time.
Okay.
And
Good.
one of the core books you absolutely had to have was the Advanced Player Guide, which is basically the PHB for. It's as necessary as the PHB is in Dungeons
Right.
and Dragons. It was a very vital piece of equipment just to have around and be able to flip through it because it did
That's
things
what
like
expanded your race and class options right off the bat. If I recall correctly, I think I still actually have first edition core and advanced player's guide on my bookshelf back over here. But
yeah.
you still had like a lot of options in the core book, right? You could
Oh
still build a
yeah,
character from the core
yeah.
book. It wasn't like split up like it is in D&D.
No, no,
But the
no.
advanced player's guide gave
Yeah,
you lots of extra options.
yeah. It was almost like Xanathar's in that sense, where it gives you a
Right,
lot
right,
of extra stuff you
right.
don't really need. But if you want to play the full game, it's like yeah, having this extra stuff, knowing what the other options are. Xanathar's is as much a part of the big the core books you need as the PHB or the Dungeon Master's
Pretty much
Guide.
at this point, yeah.
And that's great. It gives you a lot of extra stuff. But there is not one out right now for version 2. So they recently came out and said that they're actually going to be releasing one. I believe it's up for pre-order right now, and it should be coming out
Right.
sometime around the end of July. Uh,
That's fast. Coming up.
yeah, they're doing about a month turnaround time on their releases. That was one of the things I did like about when I was running. I don't know why everything started shaking. That was one of the things I did like about when I was running Starfinder. They had a very clear published. This is what our schedule is going to be. These are the things that are going to be coming out, so you could know when to try and tease out proper things and actually build out your campaign as it goes based on the stuff that's coming out. So didn't get
Plan
stuck
ahead
behind
a
the
little
wheel.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nice.
But this one, the Advanced Player's Guide is going to have a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. There's 4 new classes: Investigator, Oracle, and Swashbuckler, which I don't think I've ever actually played with any of those.
And the witch. There you go. Yeah.
The Witch is an interesting one because previously you had to get the Reign of Winter, which is the last Pathfinder campaign I played in, and probably my favorite tabletop game I've played yet has been Reign of Winter because it's. I don't know if they're ever going to remake it, so it's not really a spoiler, but basically you go hunting through Russian mythology and end up running into like Baba Yaga and Rasputin and there's a whole bunch of weird like gate jumping, dimension jumping nonsense, and it's a really cool time. One of the big hallmarks there was it had Witch, which was a more curse, almost like a support caster, where as opposed to buffing your allies, it debuffed the enemies.
Okay,
So it
I
was a
get
really
that.
cool thing. Uh, Another thing the advanced player guide is going to be kicking up are new ancestries and heritages, which are basically the Pathfinder version of races.
Yeah, they're changing the terminology over, which
Yeah,
is
I think they did that in the core book, but I'm not entirely sure. Uh, and then more archetypes, options for all classes, new magic spells. Like, this kind of stuff you'd expect in a major supplement.
yeah.
So if you're a Pathfinder player out there, let us know in the chat and put your pre-order in. I'm going to go ahead and drop a. Let's see. Go ahead and there we go. Copy. Go ahead and drop the link in the chat there, so that anybody else that is feeling the need can go check it out. If you're a Pathfinder player, it's kind of necessary. If you're running, it's absolutely necessary for our game masters over in Pathfinder world.
Want to know what they're doing?
Yeah, that was the big problem I always had with especially late in life in Pathfinder, was there were you needed a library of books, and you absolutely had to say, hey guys, we're only playing out of these books, because as a DM or a GM, I guess you couldn't actually I couldn't know everything,
Right.
and when there's
I am not capable of
yeah.
possessing all of the knowledge that you wish I had. Sorry.
Yeah. So I had a couple players come up like, "Hey, I'm playing a witch." It's like, that's not a class. It's like, it is in this book. It's like, okay, let's do this. So that's where I got my love of, hey guys, we're playing out of these 3 books. Have a party.
You want to buy me that book? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, they had the adventure path model, which I actually kind of like. It would release like the mini books, so a campaign as opposed to being one of the hardbacks, like Tomb of Annihilation. Like, this is a campaign in the book.
Right.
I think they spread it out over 6 books, and it was usually 1 to 3 levels in each book, and it would get you all the way through like level 12 to 15. It was an interesting way to do it, and they were cheaper, and you could buy them as you go.
Wrath of the Righteous, I believe. That's
Okay.
one of them, right? Does that sound familiar?
It
Am I making
does,
stuff up? Okay.
but it also sounds like a standard campaign
Sure.
name.
That could be a believable name either way, right?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I did some Pathfinder is actually kind of my first RPG that I really ever got into.
Okay.
And played a little bit, just kind of like once or twice a year. Then I played some of the 40K RPGs like Dark Heresy and
Rogue Trader and Crusade.
Actually, never played never played Rogue Trader. But the Dark Heresy and like Death Watch, if you just want to be a Space Marine and shoot things, Death Watch is fun.
Yeah.
But when I hit 5th ed for D&D, that's what really grabbed me.
Yeah, I think that's what it did with a lot of people, and I've never seen the statistics on this. This is all purely anecdotal, so don't quote me.
I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, but 5th edition did that for a lot of people, and it just opened up it lowered the bar of what you need to know, what you need to be able to play the game. It's an easier system. It's simpler to get in, and that's great, because I don't have time to become a master at this thing. Like,
and if you want to get invested and just learn everything, there's still a boatload of stuff you can just dive into. Yeah, it's a lot more approachable in some aspects.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about a couple times on this program is in AD&D and even white box D&D. If you wanted to be a wizard, you better have a master's degree in magic, because it is complicated and difficult. Dungeon Crawl Classic still has half of the book is dedicated to running magic, and there's like 10 spells. So it's like, this is really hard. But it's great, and the grognard in me loves that crap. But it's also one of those, like, you got to be in the mood for it. Making, it's very unapproachable. I would never recommend DCC as someone's first RPG.
Especially if you want to be a wizard.
yeah, it's hard. So I really like what they did with 5th edition, make it more approachable, and you can just see that. Looking around nowadays, there are people playing D&D that we would never have expected to be playing 10, 15 years ago. It's like, oh, holy cow, there's girls here. That's
I wasn't
shocking.
Playing 10, 15 years ago, so I feel that. I was just a PC gamer 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's so it's done a lot of great stuff. Open it up. It's cool now. So and I think a large of that has to do with it having simpler rules.
And
and
thank
even
you
more
for,
approachable. Yeah.
celebrities for getting everybody on board.
So speaking of simpler rules, and perfect segue here. Uh, I've mentioned a couple times in the show, so I'll be brief here. But Warhammer 40k, one of my favorite games, is 9th edition is coming. Ooh. Starting on Saturday, you're actually going to be able to pre-order the rulebook and the special edition box, and a couple other objective markers and tokens and cards and all the other random things you need. And that's all going to be coming out on the 25th. So you got a 2-week turnaround there. Now, we were talking before the show. You were saying that you have had several different Warhammer armies, right? It's not just me being the guy here.
Oh no. I definitely went through my 40k phase. I started with fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy. Jeez, it was like my second year teaching a dozen years ago. I started with Warhammer Fantasy, then had a Lizard Man army, then I jumped over to 40k and played Eldar, and then had some Space Marines, of course, because everybody has a Space Marine army,
Yeah.
and then a lot of Chaos too. That was fun. I adopted my brother's Tyranid army when he got married and started having lots of children, and
Just bring him into the fold. It's like, hey, we'll hold on to this.
yeah,
Fold.
I'll take them, thanks, bud. All right, because it's Tyranid, so you have to have a
Yeah.
dozen different of those battle foam trays just to hold all of them.
Yeah.
And,
Well, then,
but I went cold turkey and got away from it a couple years ago.
I mean, you're a better man than I. I'm still I'm still playing or still collecting and painting every now and then and playing.
Yeah, it's cool. It did look great, man. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
It really did.
I'm really happy with how it came out. That was a fun time. But I'm doing a lot more of like the Horse Heresy stuff because it's kind of a more grown-up crowd.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, everybody's has painted armies,
Did-
but it also uses kind of garbage rules. It uses the old 7th edition rules, which are not fun. But I know a lot of people really like it. But that's just because that's what they play.
Different strokes for different folks. Everybody's going to always love one rule set and hate another.
Yeah.
It just depends on who you're talking to, right?
Yeah. The rule change that they're doing now from 8 to 9, I think, is actually a pretty good one. It's more of a sort of a polishing, kind of like what we saw from D&D 3 to D&D 3.5. Okay. It's not a rebuild it from the ground up. It's like, hey, there were some sticking points that we know that there were in 8th edition. We've polished it up. Here we go. Here are the new rules that we've taken the complaints for the past 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So it's not bad. I've
good.
dug through them a little bit, but that's the big news. There is it's coming out this weekend. If you pre-order, you get all sorts of fun, wacky gubbins, including like metal coins and objective markers and all sorts of other great exclusive things that you can buy on eBay.
Did I hear this correctly that you can actually get like the rules digitally for free?
You can. That's something that they started with Age of Sigmar, which is huge.
It just seems so antithetical to what I know about Games Workshop to give something away for free.
Yeah, they've become a better company in the past 5 or 6 years. But what it's only the core rules, and I believe it has like one mission in it. It's like a 25-page PDF, and that's actually there on the link that I shared. So anybody's interested, you can check that out. It tells you how to move, how to shoot, how to play the game. It doesn't have any points values. It doesn't have anything except there was basic mission. It doesn't have like force organization charts. So you will need all that other stuff unless you're playing it that just hey, bring your models, I'll bring my models.
I'm going to need your codexes for your armies and all that, yeah. Are they still kind of just releasing those one every 6 months and drawing out?
No, they've actually been, the past couple years, they've been releasing one every other month, basically. So every army got a new codex in the last edition. Sisters of Battle are back, which is kind of shocking.
I did see that. I saw that the Mechanicus has their own army now too.
Yeah, Death Watch has its own thing. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. If you haven't looked at Warhammer in a decade or even 5 years, it's worth taking a look at it again.
No.
But I know my audience, so we're going to move on.
I'm not doing it. You're not going to make me do it.
Oh, I will. It'll happen.
I gave away all my models before I moved away from Texas.
I mean,
literally gave away all my armies.
I can grab the camera and take you to my closet of shame, and you can see what piles of gray plastic I have. Chug. All right, so it's still off. It's not Dungeons and Dragons per se, but you've played Munchkin before, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
everybody has.
I played Munchkin before I ever played Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I think most people did. It's
Pretty sure I
fantastic.
played Munchkin in college. Yeah, Munchkin was great.
Well, they are coming out with a new game or new edition version, whatever they're calling them, called Munchkins and Mazes, which you can probably guess where their inspiration is from there.
Going even more on the nose,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. That's actually kind of what their goal is because I think the original game came out around 2000, maybe in the late 90s,
Or I think early 2000s. That
early
sounds right.
2000s. Okay.
I
Uh,
think early 2000s.
so it's a really fun game. You know, if you haven't played, go do that, and we'll wait here. Uh, well, we won't, but you can do it later. But the Munchkins, it's a fun, wacky card game that's spoofing fantasy stuff. And then there's sci-fi, there's westerns, there's superhero. I think there's
Yeah, they've
zombie
added
Munchkin.
expansion packs for
Yeah.
virtually every genre under the sun, except possibly rom-coms. I don't think there's a rom-com dungeon card pack that goes in there.
There is a romance pack.
Okay, I take it back.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
so Munchkin's kind of coming. It started as just like a spoof on fantasy, and now it's its whole style of card games. There's
it's
licensed one. There's a Warhammer 40,000 one. There's a Harry Potter one.
right, right.
So there's a lot of stuff you can do with it, but it's the core games kind of remains the same. This edition of Munchkin that they're going to be breaking out is supposed to be kind of re-update. If they were remaking Munchkin today, the first core set, this is what it would be.
It's gonna be a new like box set, like the
I think
first
so,
one.
yeah. But they're saying it's going to have more updated and on the nose references for D&D. It's actually going to be talking about referencing streaming, which is near and dear to some people's hearts.
Oh, right.
Yeah, right. I'm interested to see how they're going to play that, but hey, it'll be fun. It also has all new art, which is
The box cover art already looks hilarious. I will say that. That's great.
Yeah, there's the beholder with ears. It's
The ear holder, maybe. I don't
ear
know.
holder. That's probably exactly what that is, or behearer.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's very clearly, that's what it's going for there. It's used to a bunch of the sets actually use, I think, John Kovac for their or Kovalik for their artist, and you would recognize his art if you saw it. He does like the Dork Tower and stuff.
This looks like a different art style than I've seen in previous
It is.
editions, though.
This artist is a completely different artist. It's a new one that I am stalling while I'm waiting for it to pull up.
Oh, I see it here, illustrated by Lara de Souza.
There we go, Lara de Souza. And so it's a nice art style. It's not the original Munchkin art, but that's fine.
Change that.
Yeah,
New edition,
exactly.
new time, right?
Exactly. And Kovalek's still making other stuff, so it's not like
Sure.
we're having problems with that. But Dire Rabbit is saying she would like to play Munchkin, so yeah, we can make that happen.
You got it, Derek. Okay.
Just shout it through the ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm gonna do.
So yeah, that's I think that's kind of it for the the fun, wacky, silly news. Unless there's anything out there and you guys want to talk about for that, but
Any news from the masses?
because we've been digging through all of it, and we can only pare it down to a little bit. But while we're waiting on that, there is a little bit of sad news, unfortunately, in the D&D and RPG community. If you follow the artistry, the people who actually the artists who make the worlds come live on paper, and you've been following like the Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs as a whole, you're probably familiar with the work of Jim Holloway. Unfortunately, he passed away, I believe, last Monday, the 28th, whenever that was. Which is it's sad news for everybody who's loves his stuff. He started doing a lot of stuff for the early Dungeons and Dragons, for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So if you've looked at literally any of the the early '80s stuff, you've probably seen his work and not even recognize it. He did AD&D and I believe even second and third edition. He did Paranoia. He had bunch of other stuff I'm completely blanking on, but the one where I kind of got introduced to him and realized him as an artist was for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I don't actually have any of his art on me.
Always comes back to DCC for you.
yeah, that's how I know about him. But he is all of his art, and I'm actually going to link a. Nope, that's not the right link.
I was perusing some of that earlier. That was hilarious stuff
Yeah,
from
it's a very funny.
his Hall of Fame of art pieces that he's done for books over the years. That was really good. That Goodman Games put together. That was really nice.
Yeah, Goodman Games has some really good stuff on there. So I dropped 2 links into the chat there. The first one is the announcement by Goodman Games saying, "Hey, Jim's passed away. Here's some of our favorite pieces of art," and they're fantastic. Everyone has probably seen the skeleton being attacked by the guy with the pitchfork, and it's like, no, that's not how you attack skeletons. And all of his art has that kind of playful attitude to it. It's very crisp lines. It's not like sort of the frantic brush strokes of or pen strokes of like John Blanche. It's a much crisper design, and he's sort of pioneered that kind of thing. It's very, very nice.
Very nice.
So check out his art. If you really like his art, check out the Facebook group. That's I believe it's what is that fans or the art of Jim Holloway. Right now, there's a whole bunch of people just dumping in their stuff. I say, hey, here's stuff I did. Here's how I met Jim. He's a great guy. And there's a lot of art on there. So if you're an art freak like a lot of us, you like you just love looking at the fantasy art, check it out. So that's kind of a downer, but we'll push it out there. It's out there. Everybody enjoy his art. Just think about Jim when you're digging through that stuff. Before we go on break for a couple minutes, guys, is there any other news you guys want to talk about? Let us know. Put it in the chat.
I got a little thing actually.
Yeah.
So there's a very prolific miniature painter in the world these days. He goes by Michael Mordor.
Oh yeah.
He's from the UK, Scotland technically, and he paints a huge amount of minis. He is one of the few, the proud, that has been able to actually make this a profession and do this for a living. Bless him for being able to do it. But today is his birthday.
Oh.
And Michael Mordor of the Goblins of Mordor, our Goblin King, I say happy birthday to you. Because
happy birthday, Michael.
you are a big inspiration to me as a mini painter, and thank you for all the support and kind words you've given over the years.
Yeah, and I believe he's actually on the Discord, is he not?
He pops in every now and then. Yep.
Yeah.
He does.
And speaking of, let's see if I can actually make this seamlessly happen. Nope, I can't. There we go. All right. Well, we blanked you out for a second. I tried. So check us out on the Discord, guys. There's a bunch of really great conversation in there. We occasionally have artists and celebrities and stuff drop by and talk, show off their art, and do all sorts of great things. So swing by. That's our Discord is in the link. We'd love to hear from you guys between takes and between the shows. And if there's nothing, I'm not seeing anything from the chat. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick 5-6 minute break here, just to reset and get us ready for the next
glasses.
one. But if you're thinking about it, if you're while we're gone, you think of something you want us to talk about, let us know. Throw it in the chat, and we'll hit about it when we get back. All right, so we'll see you guys in about 5 minutes. All right, bye. Hey everybody, welcome back.
Welcome
So
back.
I see we have a whole bunch of new people in the chat there, so welcome. Or, well, one new person, and Vash made it home safe, which is really what we were all hoping for.
She's not new. She's just new today. Welcome back,
Yeah,
Bond.
welcome back, welcome back. So we have the next segment here is, our kind of more casual. Everyone's going to talk about it for a second. So what is up on your hobby desk today, or past? You've never actually been on the show when I've been on here, have you? So what are you doing? What's up?
I think it was on here, but you had like a panel of people once, so it wasn't just me
Oh
and
right,
you.
yeah. The DM, DM
Yeah,
chat,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I, I, uh, I've got two home games that I run. One of them is Ghost of Salt Marsh, so a lot of that stuff is kind of in the book. Now, I have definitely added stuff because really you just kind of get one adventure per level for like, but only for like the
Okay.
first 6 or 7 levels. And that's not enough when you once you get past level 3, really. It's not. So you got
Yeah,
to
unless
fill.
you're crawling a huge
You got to make
dungeon.
stuff. Now,
Yeah.
the book is great. It gives you a lot of tools for constructing new adventures and stuff, which is what I need, frankly. Because if I have a blank slate, I'm just going to have analysis paralysis and not know what to do.
Yeah, that's kind of the
But
thing that I have, is just trying to figure out what to do next. And we'll talk about a good solution to that that's baked in the books in a bit.
aside from that, because right now my party is in one of the like epic parts of the book, so
Ah.
they're working their way through it right now. We're just kind of waiting for the next session for them to continue to work through it. I don't know. It may take a couple of more than a couple sessions. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Have they gotten to, have they, this is what you got the big ship for, right?
No, it's not
No.
what I got to make.
Oh, you just got,
So
oh, okay.
um, I also picked up the Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures unpainted uh, falling star. I think that's what it's called. Ship.
Yeah.
So it is the literally it is. We're talking about a unpainted two-mast ship this long. Actually, I think with the full stern, it's maybe a little bit longer. But
Yeah, you're out of frame at that point. Like,
I'm yeah, it's pretty big. So it's a pretty big ship. That I picked that up a week or two ago and have started painting that. And
you have an airbrush or something, right?
I do have an
Okay.
airbrush. That's what I put my kind of my base coat down for most of the ship. They're the parts that have the sails attached are actual like it's actual canvas material, and they're sort
Hmm.
of tied onto the those parts of the mast there, and those detach from the main mast. But the sails themselves don't really detach easily without. I'm worried if I try and take them off of those posts, I'm never going to be able to get them back on again. So I did not
Okay.
airbrush that part. I'm gonna try and paint that part by hand. So it means I have to find a paint that I can get relatively close in color match. That's not an airbrush paint. So I actually do have like a full set of airbrush paints with my
Yeah.
airbrush.
Well, you could always cut however it's on there, and if you know how to sew, you can just sew a couple threads on to get the canvas back on.
We'll see. Let's see.
Yeah, it's really cool. You posted some photos of it. It's a really cool looking miniature. I'm
It's
excited to see how
my,
it's going to come out.
I think my only gripe with this ship is that the decks of it are a printed cardboard.
Oh,
Like there's the graphics already kind of printed onto the decks. Now
does it
it
have
gives
a
you
grid on it or?
it does. It's actually one side has a grid, one side doesn't, but they're identical on both sides. The which is it's nice enough,
Yeah.
and you can take it apart and see what's in the fore and aft castles. Like you can take those little parts of the deck off and get to the interior, and then it also gives you two extra ones to see what's in below deck and the deck right below, and then the bottom deck as well. Those don't actually fit in the ship, but you can set them out side by side next to the ship,
Oh, because it's
so you
like
can
up to the
see what's
water line,
going
isn't
on
it?
in the interior. Yeah.
That's really cool. And we
Yep.
actually just got a subscription there. I want to thank you, Shalrath42. Thank you so
Hey,
much for
thanks,
your
Shower.
subscription. You know, well, glad you're approving of what we do.
Welcome.
Yes,
Appreciate
welcome
you.
to the tavern. So that's really cool. I know I've seen a couple places that have. I think it was actually a Lord of the Rings campaign we were running 8 years ago,
Oh wow.
and it was such a big thing that there wasn't any surprises because it was War of the Ring. So one of my friends got was like, hey, we know that you love doing large scale nautical miniatures. can you paint up the Corsairs of Umber?
Oh,
And, paint
wow.
up the ships that they're going to do to land up at the Pelennor Fields battle. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So he went out and he bought like MDF ships, beautiful ships, but they're
Hmm.
display ships, so that you get the full keel and all that. And he's like, hey, check it out. He spent probably 100 hours on each ship and came up with 3 of them. You're like, oh, dude, we can't use these. Oh, no.
They won't sit on the table.
Yeah.
Like it's.
So we ended up having to manufacture a basically dowel rod system to hold it up, and then had them pull up to a dock that was appropriately raised, and it was less than ideal, but they're beautiful ships.
This is actually this aside from my problem with the deck, uh, it's the masts attach magnetically. There's
Oh,
like
cool.
they've got those like it's nowhere can I see like where to actually take the magnets out. So they are built into the plastic
Oh, that's
basically
amazing.
of the mast and the deck. They're it's like those rare earth magnets. They stick into place. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love seeing manufacturers coming out with like really high quality stuff. Like
Yeah,
even if the deck is just printed cardboard, very clearly that's the best thing that they could, that they figured out how to make that work. And
I may look into some 3D print options for this because
ooh,
I would bet money at this point. There are some enterprising 3D designers out there that have made some STL files for some decks that would fit this ship.
yeah, that's probably a safe bet. That's
And if not, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing until somebody does.
well, the ship's been out for about a month, maybe 2 months, right?
I think it's been out a couple months. No, you know what? I think I remember seeing the ship first at PAX East, so I think it's probably been out.
Okay.
Actually, that may have just been the painted one. I don't know if the unpainted one's been out less time, maybe.
Yeah, for anybody who's unfamiliar, WizKids puts out the painted Ultimate, I think is what they call it.
Pre-painted, the
And
pre-painted ones,
yeah,
yeah. And they're I don't know. I think this again qualifies as one of those premier miniatures
that's it.
because of the size.
What? No.
But the pre-primed but unpainted are the Nolzur's Marvelous miniatures. So this is in that line. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Not going to stop me from ordering the ship from Bones 5 though for Reaper because that ship it doesn't have cardboard and it also looks very epic.
Yeah, well, we were again chatting about this earlier. The bones stuff. I have, my closet of shame. It has several large foot shoe boxes. There we go.
Sure.
Of maybe even a Foot Locker. I don't know. Of just
Only shoebox. Sure. Okay.
yeah, just shoe boxes. Of I went hard in on the first bones. Like I think I went at like the maximum level, and then all the
Oh, wow.
add-ons and all that. So I got trunks of the stuff. It wasn't
Yeah.
great. The plastic they used was finicky and had problems painting and priming. It was really soft. But the new bones, I don't know. I think that their bones black is what they're calling them now.
Bones Black is most of the new stuff these days.
Yeah.
They still have like some traditional Bones minis. You'll still see a lot of the white plastic minis out there. They're a little softer. The quality has still gone up even with the traditional Bones over the
Okay.
years.
They've
But
sort
the
of
Bones
ratcheted
the
it.
Bones Black minis, they've not reached GW levels of detail yet, but they are still just amazing quality, especially for what you're spending on it. Like the
Yeah.
dollar to quality ratio is I would say is better than the dollar to quality ratio you get with GW.
Yeah, I really like Games Workshop, especially like I said, in the past 5 years they've become a much better company. They are pricey. They're a very expensive company.
The minis are super good quality. I'm not going to deny that. They are incredibly fine quality, but the price is
Yeah.
just oh,
Well, I would say like the price for a squad of Space Marines is high, but I'd say it's on the high end of fair.
it's more approachable, yeah, because at least you're getting,
You
10
get
models.
10
They're
dudes
not
and a whole
put
bunch of
together. You've
extras.
got to
Yeah.
spend, a couple hours putting them all together.
Yeah, you
But
can pose them however you want, and it's great.
the
But
customizability,
yeah,
yes.
so that's a whole nother thing. The problem I think really comes in with their hero minis, their solo minis, where it's like, all right, I bought 10 dudes for $55. I think is what a box of Space Marines is. I can
That
spend
sounds right.
$35 on this one Space Marine.
but he's a badass. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm
it's
sorry.
hard to justify.
I'm gonna. Yeah, I can. Yes. My wife is giving me shit in chat already.
Corey
Corey
has. I
has
mean, no, this is
opinions.
this is a grown up conversation about the pros and cons and such.
And they are my opinions, I will admit.
Someone wants to see the closet. This is pretty much the the hobby opinion at this point. That's
Yeah.
everyone agrees their stuff's really expensive. As I drink out of my Bugman's mug.
Right. So the ship, the Falling Star unpainted ship, well now partially painted. That's my painting project for the next couple of weeks.
Cool.
I I I'm a patron of Michael Mordor that I mentioned earlier in the
Yeah.
previous segment, and he does a goblin paint challenge, basically like X number of minis a week, and you rank up over time the more weeks you complete and stuff like that. So he's essentially given me 4 weeks to complete this ship, where normally
Okay.
I'd be doing like at this point I'd be doing 3 minis a week.
All right. That's cool. That's awesome. Hey everyone. Oh, we got new people show. Oh, it's just Reed. Never mind. Uh,
Hey Reed.
hey. So let's see. I think there's stuff flying by in the chat. Step one: admit you have a problem. Yeah. Welcome to the party. I want to see this closet as shame. Unfortunately, my cable is not long enough to get you back to the closet. It's maybe I'll take some photos and post it in our Discord,
Yeah, we have
which
a
I
whole
believe can
craft
be
room of
found right
shame
here.
upstairs. It's it's just boxes and shelves of minis,
Yeah.
mostly bought at either a PAX or ReaperCon one year. That was great.
Oh, you actually went to ReaperCon.
Yeah, in 2018, right before we moved across the country. When we were still in Texas, we went to ReaperCon. It was fantastic. It was great.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about ReaperCon.
It was a lot of fun. Oh man. They're doing ReaperCon online for free this year. I think it's like Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, that seems to be how a lot of the cons are going. I
See,
know.
Con's going to do everything online this year too.
Yeah, Historicon is moved to CyberCon, I believe.
Okay.
So
Yep.
if you're a historical gamer, they have that stuff coming up, I believe, in 2 weeks. The 22nd, I believe, is their kickoff date. So this almost qualifies in the news section, but we're keeping our eye on our ear to the ground and seeing what's actually coming up with cons. I'm honestly not holding my breath on anything in 2020 going to someplace.
I definitely plan on doing some of the ReaperCon online stuff.
Oh yeah.
They're still intending to do online virtual classes and
Oh
stuff like
good.
that and events. Uh, Everything's free to sign up for. Some of the classes may still like require you to like have some particular materials, so they are going to like sell kits for those basically.
Okay.
They put their swag bags, which are now swag boxes, basically up for pre-order a couple weeks ago, uh, and they are up for pre-order across, I believe, across the globe now, UK and the rest of Europe, if anybody wants to get in on that. And the Reaper swag boxes are always amazing value for what you get, and
Yeah.
usually unique stuff that you can't get unless you're at a con.
Yeah, their con minis are really, really beautiful.
Yeah,
They're
and
usually have
con
some tongue
paints
in cheek.
too.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, they often sell paints that are only available at cons, like their rose gold. That's the big one that jumps out to mind right now, because they
Interesting.
actually do make their paints in-house at their Denton, Texas warehouse location.
Denton, Texas. Okay.
Denton, Texas, north of Dallas. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually used Reaper paints. That's I've always
I'm a
wanted
big
like
fan.
army painter or
I
Vallejo.
have a big old 3 boxes of Reaper paint bottles. Their Master Series paints. No, they're good. They're good quality.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm always looking for some way to make my painting skills better. Uh, yeah. So I honestly don't have a whole lot going on my end of stuff. Sort of been kicking around the condo, kind of feeling icky.
Mhm.
So read a lot of random stuff. Unfortunately, it's all been rule books. But I noticed digging around in there, there's actually a whole bunch of. I'm going to segue smoothly into the next segment there. There's a whole bunch of appendices and random stuff that most people, I believe, ignore in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Ooh,
Well, I mean, the sheer number of people that say they've never read the DMG before, but run games, always boggles the mind.
I have rule books so that when people, and I've been run. I don't run Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or DCC. I run a weird version of a game that this is the game that I play.
It's just all the conglomerated rules that you
Yeah,
remember in your head. That's what you're playing.
yeah. And then when the player's like, "Well, that's not. It hasn't been that way in 30 years." I'm like, "Well, excuse me."
Okay.
So I'm trying to get better about it and reading a whole lot of stuff in the DMG. And one of the things that actually really caught my eye is the dungeon builder. I think it's the random dungeon generator, I believe is the term that they use.
Yep. The Appendix A of the DMG, Random Dungeons.
And it's especially having poked around with this for a little bit, just the too long didn't read version of it is, I think it's really useful.
Yeah, I'll admit this is not a part I've spent a lot of time on in the DMG before. I'd like to say I've read most of the DMG. I'm not going to claim all right now because obviously I just admitted I'd never read Appendix A.
It's an appendix, it doesn't count.
I think I probably glossed over, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do this right now. But actually looking at it, I'm like, this really makes me want to actually throw something random together with it.
Yeah, it's. I played around with it a little bit in. There's a bunch of different stuff online that are basically just grid systems, and we're going to show you one in a bit that we want to sort of generate a dungeon live for people watching because that can go well. Hold on, Vash Stampede. Can we get a book of your? I'm trying to run things as close to rules as written for our campaign there, Vash. One of the reasons why I'm actually reading the DMG, so I know what rules I'm punishing you all with.
Legit.
Yeah, that seems fair. Yeah. But one of the things that building a dungeon is kind of an art. Like there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in here, and actually having the shut up, Reed. Actually. All right, so that's been a Games Tavern happy hour.
Good night.
Yeah, so the random dungeons I really like because so often I end up falling back on tropes and be like, oh, I'm just going to build this dungeon this way. And I've always kind of struggled with building like the huge, map sprawling dungeons that end up doing a whole lot of, that are windy and, have a whole bunch of, various options to go away. I tend to do very linear dungeons. I'm trying to actually make that better. One of the ways, just looking at this, is to just play around with a random dungeon generator and know going in at the very beginning that you are not just going to be a slave to the dice. The dice are going to, like everything else that a Dungeon Master is doing, the dice are sort of there to help to guide the narrative. In the random dungeon generators, it's good for ideas and lets you try and build things out. But if you make, you can paint yourself into a corner very quickly if you just follow the random dungeon generator. You can have a really long corridor that ends in a room full of closets. It's like, okay, that's weird.
Just because it is one of those random dice-driven generators, sometimes it's okay to ignore the dice roll and do what you think is cooler.
Yeah, like I was doing one, and for some reason it just started spiraling in on itself. It's like, okay, well I'm cool with that. It's fun. But I ended up having to cut a bunch of different options and like, all right, I'm not making this room. I'm actually going to turn it a little bit and reconnect it there with a secret door or something.
This is kind of akin to a lot of those, like the random tables and all the backgrounds of the player's handbook. You can roll for those, but this is also great for just idea generation. You don't have to necessarily use it prescriptively. You can just use this as inspiration.
Yeah, one of my favorite things, and I actually did mention this last week, is I've done enough improv and LARPing and other nerdy things where you need to think fast on your feet with a seed of information. But however, I'm really bad about saying, hey, you looted this goblin I didn't expect there to be. Well, you find 4 copper and a button. So I love the ideas of having random stuff charts. And good DM screens. Anytime I want to build my own DM screen, I have all my notes and then I have random stuff charts. So I picked up the DCC annual, which is just a conglomeration of optional rules and additional rules and other stuff to help you in DCC. But the second most important thing, because the first most important thing is the stash, magical mustaches for DCC, is the D200 random stuff chart. It is 200 random things of a variety of values that you can just roll on that and be like, hey, I need random junk in this goblin's pockets. What's in there? Oh, it's a bag of tofu. Cool.
Nice.
And being able to run with that and being, I can build a story off of that kernel.
I've encountered some tables like that before. Nord Games does a lot of third-party stuff for D&D. They made a book that kind of expanded on a lot of the classic humanoid villains like goblins, orcs, ogres, gnolls, stuff like that. Gave you a lot of different options for them, and then along with those, gave you like loot tables for each individual one that kind of fit thematically with this is what you would find in a goblin's pocket or an ogre's pocket or stuff like that. That was a really neat table to look at. Just reading through it has given me lots of fuel just to use later when running games for my players.
Yeah, and it's all about inspiration. Sometimes I don't want to go read the Tolkien trilogy to get inspired. Sometimes just being able to dig through a quick.
To get inspired to put way too many vowels in one elf's name, yes.
Yeah, and elves are made of apostrophes.
Yes, that's right.
So let's go ahead and start playing around with this a little bit.
Okay.
Let's see. So we have. You're much better at this than I am. This is Schmeppy, right?
Schmeppy, yeah. Schmeppy.com is basically it's a virtual whiteboard that is browser based for throwing together quick and dirty maps with tokens and stuff like that.
So it's a useful one. Oh wow, the chat is on fire. Long hallway with many walk-in closets, a lich's hall. Yeah.
Closets full of minis, yes, unpainted minis. That's what it's always
lots
about.
Of the closets of shame. So if you haven't used the random dungeon generator here in the back of the DMG, it's pretty idiot-proof actually. It includes things like starting areas, passages, how wide your passages are going to be. All of these are random things that you do, down to the type of door that you're going to be putting at your hallways, and what the different types of stairs and different types of chambers. So let's go ahead and get something going here. So for the first one that we're going to do is we have to do a starting area. So you want to go ahead and give us a D10 roll there.
Sounds like a great place to start. The starting area.
Yeah, and this is going to be like the cave entrance that you walk into, or the first room.
Got a 9.
Got a 9. Well, that's just going to be a passageway with a T intersection at the end, 10 feet wide. So it gets that granular, and we can decide as DMs how do we actually get there? Is it you dug this out like Tomb of Horrors, or you've moved down and end up this is the bottom of like a castle, or it's a cellar that opens up to this huge cavern. So there's a lot of options that you can do here. DungeonMapDoodler.com is new and fun to play with. Have you used that, Shalrath? What do you think about that? I've been playing around with Dungeon Scroll. We're not doing it live here because I don't have enough experience with it to actually play around with it. But actually, I like it. I like the presentation of the maps because it's sort of like hashed and makes it look like an old school map. But for doing it live, it's
cross-hatching.
Yeah, it's some really cool stuff. So we have our entrance to the dungeon. So do you want to go left or right there, Corey?
Let's go right first.
All right, so we're going to roll on the passage chart here. So this is just we're in a hallway. What's going to be on the rest of this hallway? I rolled a 5, which is going to be continue straight for 20 feet, and the passage ends in a door. That's convenient. While you're doodling that in, I'll go ahead and roll for what type of door we got. That is a 1, so it's just a wooden door.
Regular old wooden door. All right.
Now on the back, so it tells you there's a door. What's on the other side of the door, though, is important. And there's actually a tiny chart there for just figuring out what's behind the door. Now we rolled a 16. This is actually really coming up as well as if I had planned what we're going to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So 16 is a chamber, so we get a roll on the chamber table. So we have our door. Why don't you go ahead and give us a chamber roll on this one?
What dice are we looking at here?
20.
20? 8.
8 is going to be a 20 by 30 rectangle. However you want to fit that in. The game is really flexible on that. It doesn't say you have to have the short end be where you start. You don't have to have any of these kinds of things. It's just like, no, this is the size of the room. Plug it in where you want to go. And then you also do have to figure out how many exits are on the chamber. We rolled a 7, which will just give us 1 exit, but we have to figure out where the exit is. And that'll be on the wall to the left, so the northern wall, it looks like. And it does, we're just building this out randomly, and it sort of maps it out really well. There's a whole second section that tells you what the room can actually be for. And this exit is a door. That is a wooden door. All right, you're keeping with the theme. Can the audience roll? Can the audience roll? Do you guys have... Yeah. Can you do a D20 roll in the chat? I don't know. But yeah, if you guys have dice, feel free to roll. We'll do the first one.
Make up a number when we ask for a die roll. That's fine too.
Yeah. All right. So we have our wooden door there. I need
no
the first...
looking at the table ahead of time though for the audience members. Okay.
Oh yeah. Don't turn to page 291 on the players.
Ha ha ha.
69. Well, it's a D20, so you're clearly cheating.
Clearly. Nobody has like a modifier.
Yeah, she's a plus 49 on her on her what type of door modifier. But we do need a D20 roll for what is on the other side of that door. So if anybody out there wants to make
First
that
one.
13. It'll be another chamber. All right, so give us another 20 then. I'm hoping the lag's not that bad.
See. Maybe if someone else had tried to roll real quick, we'd have had 2 answers.
4.
All right.
It's a 30 by 30 square.
It's a what?
A 30 by 30 square.
30 by 30 square. All right.
And you can line it up however you want to do there. We do need to roll for how many exits are there while he's plotting that. So if someone can give us a D20, this is a 30 by 30 square is a small room. So we get to roll on the small room chart for how many exits. 7. A 7 is 1 exit. And give us one more D20 to tell us where this room is going to be. Or where this exit from the room is going to be. I'm not seeing anything, so I'll go ahead and chuck one. I got a 5, so that will make it on the wall opposite the entrance.
Wall, the entrance. Okay.
So the
what kind of door are we going to have?
18. An 18 is a portcullis locked in place. And beyond that door is Pond Plays 16, which is another chamber. Holy cow. Okay. So we are building one heck of a dungeon here. And it's rapidly expanding. Like most of it, just for the door table, for everyone's edification, 1 to 10 is a wooden door. And then 11 to 12 is a wooden door that's locked. And then from there, everything else has its own single number. So 13 is stone, 17 is a portcullis, 18 is a portcullis that's locked. So there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that we can do there. But
so we're beating the odds in random right now. Excellent.
Yeah. So we determined that it is a chamber on the other side. Someone else out there, give us a D20 roll to see what kind of chamber we're looking at. Two. A 20 by 20 foot square.
20 by 20 foot square.
And then one more for the amount of exits. I'm hoping there's no exits and we turn this into like a treasure room, because that screams treasure room to me. Behind a big portcullis, and we probably have, I don't know,
really does.
A minotaur or something on the other side of that door. All right, I'll roll it, no problems. I got a 13, which is 2 exits. An 11, which is 1 exit. See, now this is because we've come up with this, story of we have to go through this big gated door. We can ignore that roll, because we're right in this dungeon. We can say, no, this is a treasure room. There's no exits, or we can go ahead and put 1 exit on there. Okay, well, never mind. We're upsetting Dire Rabbit, so we'll go ahead and put in 1 exit. Don't ignore me. It's for the map. And that it's going to be on the wall on the opposite side.
Good.
So we're just building a 1-room chamber. What kind of door are we looking at, or what kind of exit are we looking at there actually? Because you have the option between a door and just a corridor. Goes to the hallway. So there's a lot of really cool stuff here. We're not going to belabor this too long because there's a lot of really, in-depth options, and you can in theory go forever.
Yeah, as long as you want, because that's, we started with a T intersection. I've only gone on one side so far. So this can really get the juices flowing. Like you said, there was a portcullis that's locked in place. That screams treasure room or something, or the opposite. This could be, a golem or several suits of animated armor waiting to surprise the party as
Yeah, there's something
well.
terrible
Like,
in there you got to hold in.
yeah,
And
or a minotaur or whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
This could be great.
so there's a whole bunch of things in there that all of this serves as great inspiration because as we're building this, it's like, oh, I think I know what can go in here, and then build out the rest of the dungeon backwards. So she rolled a 20 on basically a coin toss. So sorry, 20 doesn't actually get you anything. It just means it's a hallway. Yeah, just 1 to 10 is a door, 11 to 20 is a hallway. So sorry. So that would make that a hallway on the other end. So it's basically, this is a big vestibule into a hallway. And we're going to go ahead and slow down there on building the dungeon and roll over to just populating the dungeon a little bit. And they call it stocking a dungeon because that allows us to actually give a little bit more like proof of concept here as opposed to just watching Corey play around on Schmeppy.
It is fun though, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's actually going a lot faster than I was expecting it to. So I'm going to have to play around with that. And then what was the other one that was mentioned? The dungeon map doodler, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm always looking for a good dungeon map builder. So this next section is the stalking a dungeon section. And this is much more narrative. So it tells you what the purpose of a room is, not necessarily what's hiding in that room.
Yeah, this isn't for adding your monsters to the dungeon just yet. This isn't like the encounter builder. This is, you're giving personality to each of the rooms in your dungeon.
And there's a lot of great stuff in here, but the big thing is you need to know why you have this dungeon. What kind of dungeon is this? You have everything between death traps, lairs, mazes, mines, all the way up to like planar gates, a tomb, a treasure vault, stronghold, temples, and just general dungeon chambers. So there's a lot of great stuff you can do. And if you just have a theme, let's go with a lair because that seems like a cool one. Why not?
Yeah, can't go wrong with layers. Really. Yeah,
and
that means there's going to be an epic boss battle at the end.
Yeah. Or the boss is out doing grocery shopping and there's no one here.
Ooh. Disappointing. For the DM mostly.
Yeah. It's like, oh, cool. They leave, and as they're like, oh, there's no one here, so they fill their backpacks with gold, and as they're walking out, they run to the lich. It's like, what the hell?
What are you doing?
No murder dollar. Yes, no murder dollar. All right, so go ahead and so you don't need to do this for the hallways, because those are assumed to be hallways.
Right.
So go ahead and give us a couple D20 rolls out there, audience members, because we have 3 rooms to fill. So which is the first 3 rooms, or the first 3 rolls are going to give us the first 3 rooms. Dollar bills, not what we were looking for. 9, okay. A guard room is going to be the first one for defense of the lair. So
sounds appropriate for the first room.
Yeah,
if you ask me.
Probably where they sleep or have breakfast or something. 14 would be the next one, would be storage. I'd probably consider moving that just because that room doesn't match a storage area. I would actually be willing to build a storage in an offshoot room off there. But we can put storage there. Why not?
You can make it the other side of the portcullis can be the storage room because storage can be very loosely interpreted as far as what it's storing.
Very much so. And then we need one more roll out there. And then a 17 is a training or exercise room. Perfect. So we have the guard barracks, the training or exercise room, and then the storage room. That was so easy to actually get that going for Holy Squads. Yeah. Go tour. So there's a bunch of great opportunities, great options you have here. It does not do the math for you for your actual encounters, though. So if you still need to be able to build an encounter for the earlier rules using this challenge rating and how difficult you actually want it to be. So there's still a lot of math involved for this. But just building that, looking at this, I could stop now and be like, okay, yeah, I know how to build this out. You could probably do the same thing. You've been DMing for a while, right? And you've
Got a few years on my belt.
yeah. So you would know what you want to put into these rooms.
Yeah, this is already very thematic.
Yeah, and
Even.
there's a whole bunch of these kinds of things. But just moving on there, it actually, if the dungeon is not, and we're just going to say it's not currently in its best repair, just because that lets us produce some more rolls. So give us a D20 roll out there for current chamber state. So we need 3 of these because we have 3 chambers. But this is if the dungeon has a tumultuous history, you can roll to determine the current condition of any particular area. Otherwise, if the room is still used for its intended purposes, it remains intact. So this is a cool one. It has everything ranging from the ceiling has partially collapsed and it's filled with rubble, to it's now being used as a campsite by people who weren't the original inhabitants, to it's pristine in its original shape. I like kind of abandoned dungeons. I think that's fun. So the first room, it was the guard barracks.
Old dungeons, yeah.
The guards barracks was at one point there, but now it's kind of filled with rubble and the ceiling is partially collapsed. So that's,
I like that.
It's like, okay, that's maybe somebody did something crazy on the surface and did an earthquake spell or something.
And this could be something like the exit to this room is not apparent when entering it at first because of the rubble. This gives you some ideas for even what you could populate this room with later. There could be evidence this was a guard's barracks at some point, like some crushed cots or weapon racks full of like broken and rusted spears or halberds or something. And they don't even know there's a way out until they clear some of the rubble from the corner of the room.
Yeah, and given that we have the T junction here, we don't really look like we have anything that's urgently vital on the right side. So they could just not go into the storage
They may
room.
just choose to go the other way, which means you got to put a big reward in that storage area.
Yeah. Well, we have the corridor that's snaking up to the north there. You
Right.
could make that sort of a secret entrance back way into finding that if they go through and they fight the big dragon at the end of this or whatever.
Yeah, you never know how this is going to play out when you start building out from the left side and see what comes around, because it may end up snaking around that way, and if it doesn't, and you feel like it should, do it.
Yeah. This is your dungeon. This is really just sort of a way to to build up the rules.
Secret doors.
Woohoo! Everybody loves secret doors.
Everybody loves secret doors.
So the second one that we got is a 14, which still fits with our theme, because that was the training room. And that's basically, this one is wrecked furniture, but it's still present. It's still very clearly a training room. So if some terrible catastrophe happened in the guards barracks and caused the ceiling to collapse, it probably did something into the training room too. So that's all making a lot of sense.
You have a lot of those target dummies, or the training dummies, or the straw targets or whatever, like knocked over, broken, in disrepair, things like that, to add flavor to the room when you're describing it.
And even from there's a whole bunch of other places that you can go with this, because the next section is actually chamber contents. And for this, you actually need to do a D100 roll. And it tells you whether there's a monster, a dungeon hazard, an obstacle, a trap, empty with a dungeon hazard, or empty with treasure. So there's a lot of stuff that you can have in here.
That's awesome.
Okay, we're going to use Dire Rabbit 69. Sure, why not? So the training room has a trap.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
So this is a random trap. It is not protecting treasure. It's just painful treasure. So go ahead and give us a. So you gave us a 42. The trap is a glyph of warding. Ooh, that's fun.
Nice.
And then give us 2 separate D6 rolls. And these are going to determine how. So it is triggered by moving through a doorway or a hallway, moving through the doorway.
Oh, yeah.
And a 4 makes it dangerous. So it's not the most lethal trap, but it is certainly a dangerous one.
I'd put that glyph of warding right on the portcullis that leads out of the room.
Oh yeah, make them think it's safe, and then when they walk out, then the last person in catches on fire or something.
Already rolled for the doorway, right? You know, they try and leave the training room and go to where they can see some shiny stuff through the portcullis. Nope, trap.
Stick their hand through it, try and grab a couple coins or something.
Right, triggers. Something
Somewhere in here,
explodes in their face.
yeah, I love that kind of non-traditional traps. Somewhere in here is a way to estimate damage on deadly, dangerous, or like setback, and I can't find it. But
Ooh.
it basically it's if you're level 1 to 4, yes you are. If it's level 1 to 4, you end up you roll like a 1d10 if you want it to be a setback. If it's if you want it to be a dangerous, you roll 2d10 for what kind of damage. If you want it to be deadly, it's 3d10, and you have that for each of the tiers. I think is what it is.
Sure, you go like 1 to 3, then 4 to 6, or something like that
Yeah.
for each of those different level ranges. Yeah,
And that's somewhere in the book, and I'm mildly embarrassed that I can't find it, but also whatever, it's a book.
and there are other there's a lot of third-party companies out there that put together amazing supplements for like just traps and shit, uh, like that. 2CG makes the Total Party Kill Handbook, which is an amazing book. They've done actually volume 2 of that so far now, and so there are some hilarious things that they put together that can really challenge your players, especially if you got really smart players that get through puzzles really easily.
Yeah.
This can really give them some pause.
Now, because I have back there a couple Grimtooth's books, and those are if you're not familiar with Grimm's, they are unfair, like dick kicking contest traps. They're not fair in the slightest. It's like, oh, I walk into the room and there's a bubbling so there's one trap that is iconic. Basically, it's you're in you walk into a room and there's across the way, or sort of like a cliff, and then there's like bubbling magma, and there's a rope tied to sort of a point on the ceiling, and on the other side is a slightly higher cliff, and there's goblins shooting arrows at you. Well, you can grab the rope and swing across, and if you're halfling or smaller, no problems. If you're a full-size human, when you grab the rope and swing across, it's a counterweighted measure, and it drops down and drags you through the lava, and you end up smashing into a spike pit. And it's an undetectable trap because you're not going to be climbing up to the top of the rope to investigate it. It's unfair. It's not. It's
not fair.
Yeah, it's like a meat grinder. We're going to just hurt people kind of trap.
A lot of the TPK traps are things where they're in a sense timed, like they use like the initiative round economy for this, and some of them are super difficult, and you've got to do it within X amount of time to figure it out.
Yeah, I've always liked those where it feels like there's a way to get out of it. And they're fair traps though, where the players can figure out a way to do it without having to stumble across their weird single logic train.
Literally still result in a TPK. Like that's kind of their brand these days for a lot of their supplements.
Okay.
But it's fascinating stuff and can really get the juices flowing again if you're not just using it straight from the book.
Yeah, that's key. Or I'm going to go ahead and put this down so we can talk about some of the other. Let's see if we can make this happen. There we go. Yep, that's it. Talk about some of the other random tables that we can work with. Because while I like, as a DM, I like trying to have everything planned out as much as possible. Sometimes it's like, hey, we've been dawdling for a while. We've been moving not quite as well as, not quite as fast as I would expect us to. And I realize everyone's just been talking for a long time and the party's starting to drag. Well, I don't have an encounter planned. What do I do? And you brought up the random encounter tables. You want to go into those, sort of explain what those are a little bit?
Random encounter tables are great, especially when you're, in my opinion, especially when your party is facing travel time. A lot of pre-published adventures and third-party ones as well create random encounter tables, which is usually like once a day, roll a d20, and if it's X number or greater, roll on this table and see what they encounter. There are two books in particular. One is a official source, and one is third party that brought to mind very very, very good or very thorough examples of this. And the first one that's an official source was Tomb of Annihilation. This was yes, Max got his too. I actually ran this for a bunch of high school kids at my last teaching assignment when I was sponsoring the D&D club there. And for many of them, this was their first time playing D&D, and I ran them
Ooh,
through this.
yeah.
What really it amounts to, I just bought this book and I really wanted to play it. So
Sure. You might as
that's
well
what happened.
punish some teenagers with that.
They did remarkably well, and I was nice to them too. Um, I did have
Holy cow.
a one player die at like level 3, just straight out was killed by a trap. But she handled it so well. She was
Okay.
actually like the president of the club. Was very because I was like so hesitant. I rolled the damage for it, and I looked at her. She looked at me back. She's like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's
I
something
was
you got to
like,
weigh out and figure out how to actually do well,
I
especially
was
when
just
you're
like,
playing with kids. It's
man, it's
I'm,
good.
I'm going to pause you for a second there because Shalroth42 just came up with something amazing in the chat. DNDige withholding action actually has a 5e aliens adaptation. Imagine
Yes.
hitting an alien with a sword and everything within 20 feet gets sprayed with acid.
I love D&D. He's a great guy. He is such a positive person in the D&D community, and he's the guy that famously kind of creates stat blocks for various people on Twitter.
Oh, okay, that guy.
And he's amazing. He puts up with so much crap from people being like impatient about when am I going to get my stat block. But he's hilarious. He's such a good guy. But the Tomb of Annihilation and random encounter table is based on like so many different things. It's based on what part of the map you're on, because Tomb of Annihilation is kind of a hex crawl across the entire continent of Chult.
I'm not sure I'd say kind of. It is, in fact, a hex crawl. Let's see if we can actually get this in the.
Depends on when you find the airship. If you find the airship,
There
then it becomes
is
less of
a
a
hex
hex
map.
crawl. Yeah, the hex map. Yeah, but it breaks. It gives you so many different encounter possibilities, and then it breaks it up by what kind of terrain you're in, and it makes certain things just unavailable there, and it changes like the D100 roll value for various other things, just dependent. So it can be very unique to their setting, and that's all on those 2 pages. Then after that, the next several pages after that, it gives you kind of a brief description of every possible thing on that table. Now, random encounter tables are great, but with that caveat, I would say those they can be kind of daunting to use if you have not looked at it beforehand. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of difficult to do just cold.
yeah, because we talked about it briefly beforehand, and I dug. When you're like, hey, they have a good one. It's like, oh, I've never even looked at Tomb of Annihilation. So I pulled it out, and you're like, yeah, this page. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is. There's like 3 pages of tables, and each line has multiple entries, and it is
Yeah.
not. It's like an Excel nightmare. So I highly
Right.
recommend if you're going to be running any kind of a table, get used to your tools before you use them.
Yeah, these are not one of those things you can just kind of pick up and use haphazardly. Like, you kind of need to check this out ahead of time. It's very useful, but it really pays off to kind of look at the various descriptions of each of the different
Yeah.
little items on the list, and it can kind of give you some motivation, some tips, some flavor hints for how you to kind of set the scene for your players as well. Because really, the random encounter table in Tomb of Annihilation can be very punishing. Because I think it asks when you're traveling to like you roll to see if it triggers like 3 times a day.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard in Chult because there's
Like
especially if you're lower level.
it's a hex crawl. Like it's a rough hex crawl. Like there's a reason you're supposed to kind of start in the civilized city and not get out of there till you're at least level 3.
Yeah,
And even then, it's the Tomb of Annihilation. This is not an easy campaign.
yeah, it's one I would love to be on the other side of the screen for at one point, but
It can be very fun as long as you're prepared for a hex crawl. Like it
yeah,
is not going to be a momentous, epic battle every single session,
boo,
unless your DM just kind of plays it up, really.
yeah,
And it's possible you can get some really crazy encounters off that table, or just say fuck it and do something very interesting.
yeah. That's one of the things I do love about the pre-written campaigns is you can every session that gets played is going to, or every campaign that gets played is like, yes, well, I technically have read whatever game I'm playing here. Yep. If I decide to not spoil it and not run out and be like, I know the answer to this problem, it's going to be a completely different playthrough with each group. Just because, especially if you have random encounter tables or the solutions that the variety of players come up with.
Yeah, especially like hex crawl games like this, where it's like there's so many different things that could do. The odds of two different groups doing the exact same thing, unless you're just heavily influencing them as a DM, which if it's a hex crawl, shame on you. Let them play around.
Yeah,
read ahead.
Let them make those mistakes themselves.
Yeah, let them learn from their mistakes. It's great. Another one was from Swordfish Islands, the dark of Hot Springs Island. This was their first book. This is their random encounter table is great. It's smaller than the Tomb of Annihilation, but it gives you other stuff as well, like the motivation of whatever they're encountering.
Oh, that's useful.
This is another kind of hex crawl type of campaign that you can run here. So you're in different types of terrain depending on where your party is on the island, and rolling on the table depending on where you are, it tells you what type of encounter you're going to go up against, and then you go to another table where you roll to see what they would face, and then you roll it again to see what the motivation is. And this could be anything from like they're wounded, ritual, diplomacy, laboring, and it just gives you 1 or 2 word seeds to kind of just spark that imagination. Like use that, huge. Then run with it. Expand on that, and that's really it. You can dig into the book yourself as a DM and see what each of these things are like. And this is again one of those things I recommend doing ahead of time a little bit. But that's kind of part of DM life, is preparing a little bit in advance, especially when you're using somebody else's material. Absolutely. If you can ad lib to your heart's extent, more power to you. Oh man, that's amazing. I can't do that. I need a little bit of I need some seeds to plant and throw out there.
Yeah, that's why I really like some of the third party DM screens where they have random encounter or motivation tables.
Yes.
Or one of my favorite ones, I think it's Table Titans, the people who actually use that kind of owlbear as their one of their logos. I think it's actually
Scott Kurtz and his folks. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
But they have on the back of their one of their DM charts or screens that you can buy is a what food are we ordering tonight?
Right.
And it's things like pizza, the close Chinese place, the good Chinese place.
Right.
So it's like, oh yeah, this is great. There's a whole bunch of random good stuff like that. Or how do we punish the the players are moving too slow? What do you do? Roll a d20, and it has you hear the plot hook scream something, or the DM rolls 4d6. Just for no reason, just throws 46. Like, all right, continue.
Just for intimidation purposes, really.
DM does an intimidation check, basically.
Yeah, one of my favorite third-party DM screens. I've got a wooden DM screen, so it doesn't have anything on it, but it's got some magnets to hold stuff in place. Mm-hmm. Has literally the basic equipment and weapons, stats, blocks right there, so I know how much they cost, every weapon and piece of armor, what it does, what the stats are for all those, because that's to not have to go into the player's handbook and dig it up for every single thing. It makes life so much easier.
Yeah, that very basic information is the kind of stuff that I put on my DM screens too. But other than that, I want seeds. Something I need to know something, even if maybe if it doesn't go on the screen, but it'll go in the book, and I'll have a sticky note that says random table, just so that I can have that at hand.
I ended up making my own random encounter table for.
Nice.
I'm running a Wildmount campaign from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount that the Critical Role folks did with D&D, and I used one of the beginning adventures that they published to start, and then my group got past it, and we wanted to keep going. Initially we were just kind of planning on doing it for just a couple of weeks, and maybe we kept going, maybe we did something else, but I want to keep playing. So okay, I've got to start coming up with stuff myself now. And kind of used the random encounter tables that the writers, like, I think James Hake and Matt Mercer and all of them put together as good examples and kind of built on that from all of the stuff that they had written out that describes these various regions. Like,
Yeah.
Matt Mercer is a machine. I know he didn't do all of this, but he did kind of the start of most of it in the first place. Because yeah, he
Yeah.
did hire other writers to flesh out certain things. But goodness, that man is a machine. Uh,
I mean, D&D is his job at this point, so good for him.
if we could all be so lucky, right?
Yeah. One day.
One day, right? Yeah. But just using the descriptions from it, I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like that'd be a cool encounter. And I use the encounter builder in D&D Beyond to kind of flesh out an appropriate challenge rating based on like just, well, there's a lot of like snow goblins in this area that ride winter wolves and stuff. I'm like, ooh, that could go on the encounter table. That's right. That's right. It's on the encounter table. Okay. And
Oh right, there's only that one group of snow goblins. I forgot. Yeah, so
yeah, it's just the one.
yeah,
But even then, that last session, my party didn't trigger the encounter table a single time. I was like, I tried to be honest with it, but I probably should have just said, yeah, we're gonna have a random encounter now. Okay.
yeah. Well, that's one of the things I really do like about you know sitting on that side of the screen. It's like, oh, you know what? While like when building the dungeon, it's like, sure, I can roll the dice here and be like, yeah, the dice say that the room dead ends here, but having a
Yeah.
secret passage over to that room over there would be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to fudge it a little bit is a lot of fun.
DM Fiat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that,
Yeah.
that does sort of tie back to what I realized that we haven't mentioned it recently. We were talking about, we wanted to sort of talk about where we were hoping D&D Beyond was going to go a little bit. Unless we did cover that. I'm trying to.
I mean, we talked a little bit about it. I think,
Yeah.
they've got their encounter builder going, which is, I think that's still technically in beta, just like the dice roller is, because they're constantly making
Yeah.
improvements to both. I think, honestly, I think we're eventually going to see the map builder, or at least some way to load maps. I'm sure they're going to do a virtual tabletop at some point. It would not surprise me in the least.
What I would actually love is an algorithm based version of the encounter build or the dungeon builder that we just ran through.
Yes, yeah, like the tables.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, I hit a button and it generates, and
A random dungeon.
yeah, it generates out a little bit. And it's like, keep going. Yes, please keep going, and just keep mashing that button until you have a mural. Like I
Sure.
think that would be a lot of fun.
That would be wild. I'm sure that doesn't honestly seem like that complicated of coding for me that has no knowledge of coding, I will admit. But
I can use a typewriter.
especially with tables like that have already been created and stuff like that, that seems eminently doable.
Yeah, and if you're a coder out there, make it happen.
Yeah. I'm sure D&D Beyond would love to pay you to do that.
I'll give you $20.
There we go, $20.
Hey.
First offer. Okay. But I like their encounter builder. It works pretty well. My only issue with it is just my issue with CR is that honestly, for a lot of parties, their suggested CR does not seem actually difficult enough.
Yeah, when I do CR, or when I build encounters, I usually have some way to ramp it up. And one of the easiest ways to ramp something up is to add a whole bunch of small things into it. So you can pepper those
Action
in.
economy thing, yeah.
Yeah. So like it's like, oh, we're fighting orcs. Oh, they're doing really well against these orcs. Surprise, goblins! And boom, problem
So I was
solved.
actually looking at that. I can't remember if it was actually in the monster manual or in the DMG, but it does actually make a suggestion for you on that. Like, look at what level your party is, and then it kind of gives you an XP amount that
Yeah,
your
that's in
players
the DMG.
should earn from an encounter. Was that the DMG?
Yeah, where it says like if you're doing if you want a hard encounter, it needs to be
Yeah,
that's
the
Beowulf,
easy,
guys.
medium,
Yeah,
hard, deadly thing. Each of your players should get this much XP. So it tells you, add up all your players' XP based on their level, and that's kind of how much XP you have to work with when doling out your bad guys,
yeah.
your monsters. But then it also tells you, like, if you have multiple
You just
monsters, like
multiplier.
there's multipliers you add to kind of bump that up because the action economy absolutely matters. Having one CR6 monster against a party of 4 or 5 level fours or even threes, they could probably still take it.
Yeah, because they'll have enough denial abilities or control abilities.
Or just the sheer volume of attacks coming from 4 or 5 different characters versus one big attack from one big monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I did that one shot a couple weeks ago with the Velkin Weave crew, when DMC still had to be out, I had that gnarly hill giant variant at the end, and I just kind of kept feeding it some more HP to draw it out a little longer because there's five
Yeah.
on one. It really didn't have as much difficulty with it as the CR would suggest for that creature.
Yeah, at that point, and this kind of ties back to LARPing, is when I would get out there and I would play, the big bad golem ogre whatever from undead town. One of the things that's like, all right, if you're a wandering monster, if you're a monster boss, you don't have HP, you have a timer. So it's like,
Ooh,
all right, you're going to give 3 minutes of fun at each encounter that you run into as you do a lap at the camp. Okay, that's cool.
right.
And that's kind of the methodology that I use when doing big bads, because it's like, hey, someone comes out and like, hey, I just did bam, 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 40 points of damage. It's like, well, it was a 50-point HP monster, and you knocked out 80% of its health
Right.
in the opening salvo. That's a problem. That's not fun. I know some people really go off on that. Yeah, I win, but it's like, we're here to have to tell a good story and have a good time. Even if you get 5 rounds of combat out of it, that
Yeah.
can be really fun. Uh,
I like in chat, Showeref popped that up, our new sub,
oh yeah,
one of Sly Flourish's ideas. To add all your PC levels together and divide by two, and that should be your CR pool instead. I'm more keen to agree with that to create challenging encounters.
there's a
Yeah, that
lot less math
that sounds a
involved.
lot more appropriate, really, and that's honestly simpler math
The
than
problem I would
dealing with
have
the
with that,
multipliers.
I would have a problem with that on, and I'm sure Sly Flourish has an answer to it.
Oh yeah.
But on the how do you tier the encounters? Because the one in the DMG says, if you want it to be an easy encounter for level ones, there's going to be 100
Oh,
points of XP to go around. If you want it to be a set or a dangerous encounter, it'd be like 300 XP. If it's a deadly encounter, it's 500 XP or
I've just
whatever the numbers
I've
are.
encountered a lot of things like using the encounter builder that told me these were deadly encounters, and my players just
Breeze through.
moseyed right through it like it was nothing. I was like, well, that didn't really seem like a deadly encounter. And that's like supposed
Yeah.
to be the highest tier.
Well, Shalrath is saying that this creates a hard encounter. Okay.
Okay, all right,
That,
good to know.
that
I'm more
good
keen
know,
to
yeah.
try that to see if it actually creates a hard encounter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
seems
sounds.
worthwhile.
And frankly, from all the stuff I've read from Sly Flourish, I trust that.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff, played around with some of his stuff. It's a bunch of good
Yeah.
tips. Why does everyone keep talking about math like it's bad? It's not that it's bad. It's just there's so much work. Like I'm working on writing a fun story. I don't want to stop and
I'm
do
on summer
calculus.
vacation right now, our client. That's why. I
Oh
only do
yeah,
math from August to the next May. All right,
yeah.
that's what I try and slim it down to.
That's how that works. And I mean, you should just be able to give math to the students and just be like, hey, you do math. I'll tell you if you're wrong or not, and just roll dice to see if they're wrong. Math is bad, and you should feel bad. Uh, there we go. So it looks like Sharath did share that idea with his DM and is saying that or with their GM, and said that it worked out well. A very enjoyable difference in our encounters. That's good to
That's
know.
awesome. That's a great anecdote to share. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll play
Yeah,
around with that. That's sold me. So that's add them all together, divide by 2, and that's your CR. Cool. That sounds worthwhile.
I mean,
All right. Well, we
I'm,
are rapidly approaching 9 o'clock here, and I feel like we could keep going for far too long. But I kind of have laundry to do and stuff. Uh, so out there in Chatland, is there anything that you guys want to, any last minute things you think we are completely ignoring and we need to talk about that's related to random encounters or dungeon building?
the off
Fold laundry.
and the often ignored appendices in various
Yeah.
books.
I'm going to try and do this kind of thing periodically. We're slowly building out a repertoire of, with the new happy hour schedules, where we do news, and now we have kind of a book thing that we're going to talk about for inspiration. We're going to talk about weird rules. We're going to talk about a bunch of different tips and stuff. So if there's a segment like that you want us to start covering in semi-regular basis, throw that in the chat or hit us up on our Discord again. There's a whole bunch of great ways that we can communicate with you. I have a Twitter. It's at CMAC. I have to zoom in for this. CMAC20XD6 for all my Stinko Man fans out there. And Corey, what's your Twitter there?
You'll see me there at Mr. Smithwick. That's how you pronounce that. Sorry,
Mr. Smithwick.
The spelling is there.
So you can hit us up at Discord, reach out to us on Twitter, and I believe that all of our shows have their own Twitter handles, but they all fall under the umbrella of @TheGamesTavern. So ping us on any of that kind of stuff. We love reaching out. We love talking to our fans, talking to our viewers, talking to people who are closely related to the show or not related to the shows at all. We just enjoy talking about fun things on tabletop. So let us know if you have anything that you want us to chat about. If you just want to reach out and have questions. Otherwise, I think this is probably a good place to leave it for the night. What do you think, Corey?
I think we've beaten this horse, but it's been a fun time.
Yeah, it's a good time. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. A big shout out there to Showrath42. This is the first time I've seen you in the chat. I don't know if you've been around before, but thank you so much for joining in and subscribing. We can't do this without your support, everybody. And Showrath, again, thank you so much for the subscription. That's a big deal for us. And we hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night is the Velkin Weave. Corey, you're on the Velkin Weave still, right? Yeah?
I'm on the Velkin Weave still. They haven't killed me off yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's going to be starting at 7 p.m. What happened real quick for the last one, just to sort of tease people to get them in? You guys finally got to the Fey Market at some point, right?
We did make it into the Fey Market. We are in the Fey Market dealing with old enemies, sort of, that aren't maybe enemies anymore. And, it's the Fey Market, so we have to be careful what we promise and what we say around all these fairy folk.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how you're going to try and get out of that and how DM Cecil is going to just say, nah.
Carefully.
Sounds fantastic. And then Thursday, we're going to be doing Whiskey, Magic, and Destruction. The team has just solved some kind of murder mystery with shockingly articulate mimics that ate people and did things.
Smart mimics are terrifying.
I
didn't like that at all. But in a good way. I didn't like that at all.
I forgot they could be that articulate. That's like, oh, right. That's a thing. So again, I'm reading the rulebook again. But yeah, we're getting to Luskin, and we're going to step off in the Pirate City, and I'm sure we're not going to be able to leave immediately because things are going to happen. But we look forward to making it happen. So everybody, please have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow and Thursday, and then again next week for That Mini's Paint Show on Mondays and Games Tavern Happy Hour on Tuesdays, and then we start the cycle all over again. So everybody enjoy your evenings, and have a great night, guys.
Have a good night, folks.
Bye.